Good morning, everyone. Mariam, you're still on mute.
Sorry, guys. Just to start again. Welcome to day 3 of the first online edition of Women in Engineering Days. Happy to have you all here. We are Mariam and Lieke, and we are your hosts of today. We are both located in rainy Amsterdam right now, and actually are very curious where you are right now. In which city or country are you located now? And please let us know in the comment box. Very curious.
Yes, we have a short delay in the live streaming, so I will continue with the introduction first. We organize these Women in Engineering Days because at ING we have some passionate female engineers working for us, and they are really happy to share their personal stories with you, but also technical topics. So today we have 2 talks. We will start with the technical topic. And this talk will start soon and will be about automation by Sutapa. And at 12:30 we have our second talk by Bidisha, and it will be a personal story about her journey.
Some practical information. Every talk will take about 45 minutes, and including a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comment box on the right. And be aware, that's an important one, that there was a 20-second delay between the live streaming and YouTube. And we have a small break at the end of this talk, so between the 2 talks today. So that would be around 12:50.
Yes. So we see someone, Wendy from Utrecht, and not a lot of other comments. Please let us know where you are. It's nice to know for us. So now it's time to introduce our first speaker, which is Sutapa. And Sutapa is one of our most active engineers for our internal tech community. So I'm really excited that she's here to share her story about automation. Sutapa?
Hey, thanks, Lieke. So thanks a lot for introducing me. To start with, let me give a brief introduction about myself. I've been around in the tech industry for 12 years now. I've worked in different roles as a developer, as a tester, as an operations engineer. So a huge part of my expertise is also in performance testing. So I'm an expert performance tester, and I have experience in both functional and non-functional testing. So that's a little introduction about myself. And of course, I come out from India, and I've been in Netherlands for the past 7 years. So it's like a second home for me. So let's start off with our topic. Now, before I jump into the story of my automation journey, I would like to tell you a tale of 2 worlds. Now, if you look at the picture on the left-hand side of my slide, it shows women collecting garbage with their bare hands. Now, as you all know, this can be highly dangerous and it can lead to a lot of health hazards. Compare this to the picture on the right-hand side of the slide, where garbage is collected automatically using the garbage collector. And this does not involve any manual intervention, and it's way more safer and does not lead to any risk, any health hazards. Now, if we draw this analogy to the life of an engineer or a tester, there are several kinds of tasks that we encounter in our day-to-day life, where it is highly boring and highly repetitive in nature. Automation gives us the necessary tools that arms the tester or the engineer to make his life easier and also free up his time for engaging in more interesting and innovative tasks. Now, as you know, testing is a vast domain. So it's a huge ocean. There are different kinds of testing that you can talk about. But today, my story centers around regression performance testing. So now what is regression performance testing? Let me explain in a layman's term. So in a layman's term, regression performance testing really means testing the performance of a software after changes have been made to different parts of it to ensure that the performance of the software has not been adversely affected by the changes or the modifications that have been done to the software. Now, to give you a brief idea of how it works in my department. So in my department, I have around 12 DevOps teams and a couple of supporting teams. And I belonged to a team that was responsible for catering to the performance monitoring and capacity requirements of the other teams. We used to have a bi-weekly release cycle. At the end of every release cycle towards the cutoff date, all the DevOps engineers, they used to commit all their changes into Git. After an extensive unit or system testing, all these, the code was put together into a single unit of deployment, which we often know as a release. Now, after this release has been bundled up, then it is put into a lower, it is deployed to a lower functional environment for extensive regression functional testing. And after the successful regression functional testing, this code is then deployed in the acceptance environment for both chain testing. So chain testing with the other interfacing applications and for extensive regression performance testing. And once both these testing have been successfully completed, the code is ready to be deployed into production. Now, as we all know, ING as a bank handles thousands of transactions per day, and therefore, optimally performing software is very important. And therefore, these regression performance tests, they play a very critical role in ensuring that the software that is delivered to production performs optimally. We, in my department, we used to have a regression performance test that was executed at the end of every delivery, at the end of every release pipeline, which included a lot of manual steps, and it was highly dependent on time. Why was it dependent on time? Because in our landscape, the online traffic or the online transactions, they are not only affected by the software, but they are also affected by the background batch jobs that run in parallel to it. Therefore, our regression performance test suite, it was highly dependent on time. And because it was highly dependent on time, this led to a lot of delays in properly executing the regression performance test, and in turn that also delayed our release cycles. Very summer afternoon, when my lead, he came up to me and asked me to take care of the regression performance test for that particular release. He explained the task involved was as simple as waiting for my fellow DevOps colleague in the DevOps team to refresh the environment using the latest scrambled and mask software, waiting for him to refresh to install the latest release, and then trigger the normal sanity performance test, followed by triggering of the actual regression performance test. Seems easy, right? But however, at the end of the day, the task appeared to be much more complex than I expected to be. It was almost 6 p.m. in the evening, and every time I triggered the the sanity performance test, the system started puking out errors. Frantically, I ran to my colleague in the DevOps team who had actually helped me to create the environment. Together, we spent a couple of hours, and after extensive analysis, we found out that we had missed a couple of steps in restoring the environment. Finally, we managed to fix the environment in a couple of hours, but by then the time-dependent batches had already been triggered, and therefore we couldn't complete our regression performance test that day. Finally, we managed to complete the regression test successfully after a day, but by then already our entire delivery pipeline, or rather our release pipeline, had been delayed by 1 complete day. Now, this is just a single example of what could actually go wrong, was actually going wrong with our manual regression performance test. Now, on the screen in the slide, basically you can see what are the other different things that could go wrong. The first thing, sometimes it would happen that we were using a wrong backup. Sometimes while installing the release by mistake, due to human error, a wrong release was installed, and that would actually render the entire regression performance test completely useless. Also, the triggering of the regression test, since it was a manual activity, often by mistake from the performance tester, a wrong test would be triggered. Also, because the batches were highly time dependent, so once the batches for the day had started, there was no way we could again re-trigger our regression performance test, and we actually lost a day. Another problem that we often faced was, so we had a lot of, as I already mentioned, we had a lot of bad jobs that used to run in parallel to our regression performance test. And at the end, while doing the analysis of the regression test, it was very important to also collect the runtimes of these data. But if by mistake, somehow this data, the environment was refreshed or the data disappeared, then we would have to repeat the whole cycle of the regression performance test once again. Another problem that we often faced was that the collection and the analysis and the reporting of the results was actually manually done using Excel. So even a very experienced performance tester would actually take around 4 hours to get all the data in one place on an Excel, find out the values, and actually see if the regression performance test was successful or not. So it was highly prone to human error, and on an average took around 4 hours. So you can see there were many pain points in our regression performance test delivery pipeline. So something had to be done in order to prevent all these human errors and various type of problems, all these problems that we faced in our regression performance test. I decided, together with my erstwhile team, I decided to start to think of an automation that could prevent such human errors. I started by creating an overview of the manual steps that were involved in the current regression performance test delivery pipeline. After a series of discussions with my fellow colleagues in the DevOps teams as well as my other team members, I came up with a plan that would enable us to completely automate the regression performance test delivery pipeline And in addition to that, would make it completely independent of time so that we would be able to start the regression performance test in sync with the batch jobs. Now, it was a big automation that we had planned. It was not something that we could deliver over a couple of sprints. Therefore, together with my team, we decided to break down the entire development of this pipeline into small chunks or chunks of work that we could deliver over multiple sprints. So every sprint, we delivered a small part of the automation. And finally, we had a almost completely automated pipeline. Now, we had a completely automated pipeline. Now, as you can see in the next slide, the refreshing of the environment was automated using shell scripting, using shell scripts and a scheduler. The installing of the release was also automated using Jenkins. The triggering of the performance sanity tests, they were also automated using a combination of Ansible and Jenkins. So the Jenkins basically called the HP Performance Center API, and therefore we could trigger it automatically. The next step, that is the load runner test or the performance, the real regression performance test, they were also automated using the Jenkins Performance Center API. Finally, the duration of the batches were actually modified in such a way so that it could fit into a 9-hour window and that they could be started in parallel to the triggering of the regression performance test. Now, the collection of the batch data, as I had mentioned, that was also a pain point for us before automation. So that was automated using Ansible and Jenkins. Last but not the least, the final analysis, which earlier before automation would take around 4 hours, that was automated using a Polymer-based in-house framework and a combination of Jenkins. Finally, at the end of this automation, we were able to run actually regression performance tests every day. And this not only helped free up time for the DevOps engineers who were involved in this release, but it also helped the members of my team as well as myself to free up my time so that we could engage in doing other stuff like improving the regression performance test delivery pipeline or learning new technologies or even maintaining it. So, and in this slide, what we can see, it's just a kind of metrics of how much time and effort we saved as a result of this automated pipeline. So before automation, it would actually take a whopping 18 hours in a happy scenario. So considering that nothing goes wrong, none of the factors that I mentioned have actually occurred, we needed at least 18 hours to complete this whole regression performance test successfully. However, after automation, we were able to bring down this entire, we were able to bring down the time required for executing the regression performance test to just 10 hours. So that was quite a lot of reduction in time and effort that we had made as a result of this automation. So that was my story of my automation. But as you all know, every journey has its own challenges. Mine one also had a lot of challenges. Now, the first to start with was continuous learning. So the thing is, I had automated test cases before, but this was really different because I was automating an entire regression performance test delivery pipeline. In order to start automating the pipeline, I had to learn a lot of new technologies like Ansible, Jenkins, a scheduler, different types of scheduling tools, shell scripting, and that required time beyond my normal working hours. But because I had this dream of automating the entire delivery, regression performance test delivery pipeline, I was driven with an adrenaline rush to even work beyond my working hours. Now, the next biggest challenge that I faced was identifying the correct tools. Now, because I was automating a regression performance test pipeline, there was never a single tool that could do everything. So, in order to identify the right tools that could actually help me achieve the optimum automation, I had to understand the base. I had to read through a lot of online tutorials, check out different tools and technologies, and understand their basics, and then apply it to my automation. The next problem, or rather the next challenge that I faced, was continuous feedback. Now, since this automation of the regression performance test took place over a large number of sprints. Basically, we were building this automation almost for 2 years, and also at the same time we needed to maintain our current rate. So we had to continue testing the performance of the releases. There were many a times when we were in the middle of automation and the pipeline would break, and we had to make sure that still the regression performance test was being executed successfully. And as a result of this, we often received a lot of feedback from my stakeholders, who were mainly the DevOps teams and other stakeholders. So it can sometimes be very overwhelming. But what we decided as a team, that we would take this feedback seriously, analyze them, and see which feedback could actually be implemented in our regression performance test pipeline. And finally, after deciding on these feedbacks, which feedbacks could actually be implemented, we used to set aside a couple of story points every sprint so that we could work on it, as opposed to developing new features in the delivery pipeline. Now, the next, I should say it's more, it was one of the biggest problems or challenges that I face, was having a production-like environment. As you all know, performance testing is highly dependent on the conditions of the environment, the environmental factors. There are a lot of environmental factors that affect the outcome of any performance test. Now, since I was automating a regression performance test, it was very important to have an environment that was very close to production. We have noticed in the past that many times a slight difference in the configurations of the environment could lead to a huge difference in the performance test results, and that in turn would render the regression performance test completely useless. So therefore, having a production-like environment, so rather having a test environment which is very much similar in configuration to production, was a challenge. But kudos to my erstwhile team and my colleagues for having finally been able to provision and test environment that was very close to production, and our results were highly predictable and comparable to production. Now, the next challenge that I faced was knowing the ING landscape, or the knowledge of the landscape. So when I started on this journey, I realized that automating performance test or automating any test is way more different than automating an entire delivery pipeline. In order to build a delivery, in this case, a regression performance test delivery pipeline that was very close to production, I not only needed to have a knowledge of performance testing, but also I needed to understand the different products, functional aspects of the different products, the batches, as well as the landscape well. Because without understanding that, I could not build a regression performance test that was very much similar to production. Now, the last challenge that I faced was showing progress. Now, as I already mentioned, that the entire automation of the regression performance test pipeline was done over a couple of years, over several sprints. And at the same time, we also had to execute the normal regular performance test. And many a times we spent our energy in fixing the delivery pipeline rather than actually completing the work. And that often made it difficult for not only me, but also the team to actually show progress to our stakeholders, which in case were the DevOps teams, that we were actually progressing on completing the regression progressing in building the regression performance test pipeline. So these were some of the challenges that I faced. And finally, to wrap up this session, I would like to offer around a couple of tips and tricks, which I think will be could be highly useful for anyone who wants to be a successful automation engineer, or even wants to start on the journey of automation. Now, the first tip of the day is to know the why, what, and how of your automation. So what do I mean by why? So when you're starting to automate a pipeline or maybe a test case, the first question you must ask yourself is why? Why do I need to automate? Why do I want to automate? Will this automation reduce the time and effort? Will it reduce human errors? Will it reduce the time required to complete the release cycles? Well, these are some of the questions you need to answer. Once you have an answer for this, you can jump to the next part, that is the what. So what entails understanding what you need to automate? So you could start with, if you're automating a test case, you can start with creating an overview of the manual test cases that are involved in your test suite. If you are automating a delivery pipeline like I did, in that case, you would first need to start creating an overview of the existing steps or the manual steps that are there in your delivery pipeline, and identify which parts of the delivery pipeline are pain points, take a lot of time to execute, are prone to human errors, or you repeat it at least 3 to 4 times a month. Now, once you have identified that, you are almost ready to start on your automation journey, but not quite there. So what are we missing here is the how. So how involves understanding how you're going to achieve the automation you desire. So this involves going through the basics of different tools and programming languages, doing a sort of analysis, which tool will actually serve you, which tool will actually be best to enable you to achieve your automation. And as per my experience, it's often a combination of tools rather than a single tool that can do it all. Now, the second tip of the day is to grow from your feedback. Now, often automation in an agile environment involves receiving a lot of feedback from your stakeholders, from your fellow colleagues. And the tip here, or rather the trick here, in order to turn that, in order to make sure that the feedback that is given to you is useful, is to analyze that feedback. See if the feedback can really be implemented in your automation, and then prioritize them and implement in your automation as soon as possible. The next tip of the day is to learn new technologies and tools. Now, as I already mentioned multiple times in my talk today, that I had to learn that automation involves learning a lot of tools, programming languages, etc., and then understanding the basics, and then choosing the tool and programming language that is optimum for your automation. Now, this involves naturally doing a lot of understanding and learning a lot of tools. Now, thanks to the internet today, we do not have to go over to a huge library and check out fat books. You can just type a couple of keywords on the Google search bar, and you are presented with a huge repository of online tutorials, YouTube videos, etc. So do not be afraid to learn new technologies and apply it to your automation. And the last tip of the day is to break down your automation journey. Now, sometimes automation can be very simple, like just automating a couple of test scripts and we are done. But sometimes automation, as for my case, can involve a huge task like automating the entire delivery pipeline, and it may not be possible to deliver the automation in a matter of a couple of sprints. In that case, it might sometimes seem to be a Herculean task for the engineer. And therefore, my suggestion is to break down your entire automation task into logical small chunks, which are realizable in a sprint's work, for example. And that really helps in order to build a product or an automation that is highly that actually fits the needs of your customers or your stakeholders. So do not take the whole chunk of automation of your automation and be discouraged by it, but be ready to break it down into small chunks and deliver it over a couple of sprints. And that was all from my side. And I'm pretty sure you guys will have a lot of questions in your mind. I hope you enjoyed my talk, and now I'm ready to take your questions. Mariam, I will hand over the stage to you.
Thank you. Thanks for your story. There is one question from Nadia. I'll put it on the screen so you can read it by yourself.
Okay, so it says, I'm curious how to deal with database data required for testing. Okay, so to start with, yes, we have a big database. And basically, I work for a department which is the heart of the bank. So you can imagine it is quite a big database. And Yeah, for data required for testing, what we usually do is we every day we have a backup process that runs and in production. So now this data so basically at the end of every day we have a backup in production. This backup is then properly scrambled and
Sorry.
masked. No, don't bite. So this this data is then scrambled and masked to make sure that all the sensitive data is removed, and then it is restored to our acceptance testing environment on which we execute our regression performance test to make sure that our performance test is very much, actually reflects what happens in production. And yes, we have we have around 8 million records plus 2 million records. So yes, it is a huge database. Nadia, I hope that answers your question. If you have more questions, you can always contact me.
Okay, thank you, Sutapa. And the next question is from Veronica. How many people were involved in this project and what were their tasks?
Okay, so basically,
that's the first question.
Yeah. So I'll go with the first question. So let me think. Actually, there were 3 people who were involved in this, like literally me, myself, and my lead, my previous lead. So actually, we were 3 people who were building it. Actually, but we had support from 2 other members who were database experts. So basically, we were a team of 5 who delivered this automation. And I think there's a second question.
Yes, exactly. In your opinion, what is the minimum number of people in such a project to make the flow efficient?
Well,
why are you laughing?
Well, it reminds me of my, journey. So
that's good.
Yeah, so basically, I can't tell you what is the optimum number, really. I can't tell you. But for us, it was like 3 people who really worked on performance testing, and I was the one who basically was kind of heading it because I made out the plans, etc. So yeah, optimally, I would say, to give a number, I would say 3 or 4 people with expertise in, say, database and in testing, and someone with a little bit of agile mindset. So yeah, optimal team could be 3 or 4, and also the number of people you need depends on the lifespan, right? So what is your time span for this project? So if you have like for example, in my case, this automation was not my sole work. I also had to work on other stuff, and we delivered this project over a span of 2 years. So the more your span, the more less people you can do with. And of course, so it actually depends on your situations, but optimally 3 to 4 should be enough if they are motivated, of course.
That's important.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And there's one more additional question from Nadia. Thanks. Sorry, I have just one more question. What database tool do you use, and what tool do you use to mask the data?
Okay, so I'm not sure if I can give you the name of the database, but we have a proprietary database that is used, a banking software. Basically, that's the database. But to give you a high-level overview, it's a B3 database. It's a file-based system. So it's not like the conventional Oracle database or something, but it's a really highly efficient database which is used in banking. Usually, it's known as Profile. And the tool you use to mask data, well, as I already told you, there was not a single tool that could do it all in my journey, because we had a software that was that was from a different company. So we really couldn't use any conventional tools. So most of our stuff are actually done using shell scripts. Shell scripts and Ansible. So that's what we used. So we actually had shell scripts that were manipulated by Ansible. I hope that for masking data, we actually use that. And of course, because we had a database which used a proprietary language, we use the code of the language itself. So yeah, if that answers your question.
Thanks, Sutapa. And I have another question from our second speaker, Badisha. So I'm asking it on behalf of her. Sutapa, what is your view on the next dot in the horizon for automated testing?
Well, I think the options are unlimited. It's a very broad horizon. When I started, as I've spent around 7 or 8 years in being a performance tester and doing different types of testing. But once I started this project, it made me aware that so much was possible in automation. So I would say with the current tools and technologies that I see around, the horizon is really bright. And actually, sky is the limit to automation. Basically, anything you repeat, I think anything you repeat at least 4 to 5 times a month, you should always think of finding an automation for it to make your life easier. So I think sky is the horizon.
Wow, sounds great. One more question, Sutapa, from Veronica again. Let me show it to you. What programming language did you use?
Okay, so as I already mentioned in my talk, that it was not a single programming language or a tool that could do it all. So for example, the refreshing of the database, that was done by shell scripts. And the scheduler, so we have earlier we used to have a mainframe scheduler. Now we have a new scheduling tool from Stone Branch. So we used a combination of that. For automating our release, we again had Jenkins. We had scripts that were run via Jenkins. So that did the trick for us. Now for triggering the HP Performance Center sanity test, we actually used Jenkins HP PC API. So we could call the performance test suite, which was developed in Java, of course. So it was the programming language of the performance test scripts itself was Java. And they were those performance tests that were developed in HP Performance Center could be called using Jenkins. So that's how we automated that part. And then finally, the collection of the data after the batches were run for the day, they were collected again using Ansible scripts. So Ansible and Jenkins. And then finally, the reporting framework, as I already mentioned, we used Java for it. We had a Polymer-based reporting framework, which was actually a web UI. And in the backend, we had Cassandra database. So I can't answer your question in one word, but yeah, it was predominantly shell scripts and Java that we used, yes.
Okay, are there any other questions? Something else you would like to add to your story, Sutapa?
Well, the main thing is the last thing. Well, the main reason I wanted to share my story today was I want everyone watching this particular webcast to really think about automation, because it really helps in your day-to-day life. And at the same time, when I started my journey, it gave me so much of energy to learn new things. And it just I can't express my enthusiasm. The amount of things I learned you will open, it will open up a new horizon for you, automation. Really, and I have seen. Okay, so it is very common amongst testers, especially, to think that if I automate something, I am going to I lose my worth. For example, if I have automated the test, then after some time they won't need me. But that's not the case. When you automate something, you save a lot of time and effort, and in the process, you learn many things. And going forward, you can have your you can start automating other things and increase your horizon of knowledge. So please, folks, this is my message. Never be afraid of learning new things, and always consider if you are doing repetitive tasks. Can be anything, even in your daily life. Start embracing automation. It will never reduce your worth.
Perfect. Thank you, Sutapa. Nice, great story, and also great questions. Thank you all for your attention, everybody. This talk is recorded, so you can watch it again on our YouTube channel. We have a short break now until 12:30, and then we will be back again with our second talk from Vidisha, MyStory, an open book. So that's a non-technical story. And hopefully we see you back in a few minutes. Hi everyone, welcome back. And for those who just joined us in this live stream, welcome to the first edition of the Women in Engineering Days. We are already in day number 3. And some practical information for you. The talk will take 45 minutes and there's a Q&A at the end of the talk. So if you have any questions, please ask them in the comment box on the right side. And be aware that there's a 20-second delay between the live streaming and YouTube. And this talk is also recorded, so you can watch it back afterwards. Yes, we are ready to introduce our second talk, MyStory, an open book, from Vidisha Agarwal. Good to know about Vidisha is that when she has the time and the energy permits it, she loves dancing, reading, or going out for a nice run by the lake in the forest near her home. So we want to know more about Vidisha and her story. The floor is yours, Vidisha. You're on mute, Vidisha.
Yes, that's why I checked. Can you hear me? First of everything, so first of a virtual talk, and thanks for the introduction, Lika and Mariam. Welcome everyone to MyStory, an open book. As I said, it's a first to a lot of things, including also sharing of my story, a personal story. I've done quite some technical talks before this. As Mariam mentioned, this is my first non-technical talk. And I would like to remark a bit on the if time permits, so that also gives away a bit that I'm a mother of a toddler. So the ones who have kids might actually recognize this. Time is a precious element for all of us. Before we get into my story, a few things to mention. This is really my story. This is no toolkit. This is no box of tips and tricks. It's really my journey from engineering to leadership and basically all the experiences so far. It is heavily guided by experiences, but also inspirations I've drawn from friends, family, and also a lot of people across my professional life. So take what you like, get inspired. That's the purpose of my story. I hope to inspire people the way people have inspired me. So take what you like and build your own journey. That's mainly the message of my story. So who am I actually? I was told this a couple of years back. I was very naive then. Didn't know if it was meant to be a compliment. Didn't know I was supposed to smile. Didn't know how to react overall. So I still remember that day. This was in the middle of a talent event. I was one of the young talents identified. And the other talent who was identified, so basically there was a sort of a competition of to be chosen the top talent. And I could see the backstage conversations going in these tracks. But really, who am I? I'm no different than any other. I was born in a very small town in India, very close to the foothills, which is what you see on the left-hand corner, top left corner. It's a small town called Siliguri. Born and brought up and raised by a single mom, my greatest inspiration of life. I live in the Netherlands for the past 12 years now, married to my wife, who is the center of this picture, Anna, who is another great inspiration and sort of my check every time I go through ups and downs in my life. And now I have my little baby, 2 years old, grows really fast, and my ultimate, recluse, if you can call it so. Apart from this, as you can see, I love dancing. This is a picture from the right-hand corner, top right corner is a picture from the ING Gay Pride boat. Have been participating in it for the last 5 years, except the last year, even when I was fully pregnant, not last year, 2 years back, when I was fully pregnant and they were ready to make the boat comply to my needs, but I didn't think it was a good idea to be on a boat at 8 months pregnancy. But this is absolutely something that I love to do, and diversity and dancing being two of my top, tickers. And of course, when time permits, or when I need peace, water is where I want to be. I love kayaking, even though I don't know swimming. So that also tells a bit about myself. And of course, gazing at the ocean is something that really gives me a lot of peace. So what's this talk about? As I mentioned, this talk is really about my journey to the famous saying of the glass ceiling. Now, you can say, what is the glass ceiling? When I was growing up in my career, I heard this phrase quite a lot, especially in for women, hitting the glass ceiling. Am I there? I don't think so. It's something that I will figure out. But my journey is really about as I'm going along. Is it really a ceiling? I don't know, but probably it's more of a journey towards leadership. And with every step in leadership, you will find some kind of a ceiling, whether it's glass or not. That's to be decided, and whether it's specifically for women, I'm not so sure. But I will share my story as a woman, as a bisexual, and as a colored woman, as I started the remark of one of my peers. So what is my current role? So I am an IT area lead within ING. What does that mean? I am responsible for corporate banking in the whole corporate banking space, focusing on lending. I'm responsible for the IT supporting this business line globally. We're working on transforming, hence also doubling the size, which is why I'm also joined recently by another colleague who will share my responsibilities. But as part of my responsibilities, I really take care of people, processes, systems, you name it. And the best part of it being the architecture bit, which I really love doing, looking at end-to-end architecture and how we're going to build for the future. And the other part is, of course, mentoring people, and not just the people that I directly manage, but also people outside my direct influence. So what happens is when you start on this journey, when you're a talent, you get noticed. So, of course, the key lesson being there, focusing on strengths. And when you start off, you get this constant question. What do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? How do you see yourself growing? To be honest, when I started my journey, I was like 22. And I started getting these questions when I was 24. I had no clue. I really don't know. 5 years, that's a long time. I didn't even think about what would happen 1 year down the line. 5 years was way too far away. So what I did was I just did what I loved doing. Every time I found something new, something challenging, I just went for it. And that's how I actually started off within ING as well, because I initially started off as a programmer within another company called Cognizant in India, and then ING was my client. And since then, practically, I've been with ING. But in between, I took a break of 6 months, which is when I was trying to figure out what do I want to do next. And I was studying for an MBA. I was trying to interview for all sorts of roles. I tried a few things, and then I came into my first role within ING, which was into architecture. And 3 months down the line within ING, I already got the question, what do you want to be in 5 years? I was like, yeah, I don't know. So I delved deeper into security architecture, which was my absolute favorite topic at that point in time. And I did that for 3 years, learning loads and loads coming from a programming world to an architecture world, really defining architectures at the infrastructure level. And I really thought I'm going to be the security architect. Why? Because one, the topic was interesting. Second, there were no women in this area. And I wanted to change that. But like a lot of other things in my life, an opportunity came by, which was about a very different topic, somewhat related to the topic previous to my talk, testing, chaos engineering. And somebody posted something about it, me being the curious me. I went looking for the topic and I responded. And before I knew it, 2 days down the lane, I got a call saying, Vidisha, would you like to lead it? I had no clue what it meant. I just knew this was a topic that I knew nothing about. It was about leading a topic, which means starting from scratch, no team, no design, no implementation. So I said, okay, that's me. And I went ahead, set up a team, got my first flavor of leadership in the sense of driving the content, setting up a team, getting people to actually know a new topic and really go for it. Go for it in the sense of evangelizing it, bringing it to everybody, and creating an awareness. And if I look at it, that gave me quite the base of my leadership. Why? Because I don't know where I want to be in 5 years, but what I know is I love new challenges, which bring new learnings. I love getting people together. I love connecting the dots, doing architecture, creating change, challenging the status quo, whether it's about new concepts like chaos engineering or site reliability, which was a topic from yesterday, or be it about people who, like me, have no clue where they want to be and are asked those questions by leaders and managers, and they just think, am I so clueless about my own career? Am I so naive? Am I not doing the right things? So basically what I love doing is I love turning new leaves. And that's my journey to the glass ceiling, really. And if I go further, what I figured during this whole journey is, I don't know if there's a glass ceiling, but definitely it's a glass stair. And it's not just a straight staircase, it's quite spiral. And why I use this spiral staircase analogy is, with every step, one thing I learned was there'll always be blind spots. And when you say blind spots, how are they created? Where do they come from? It could be environmental related. It could be self-inflicted. It could be about perceptions of people around you. And I can give you an example of a perception. So during my career, one of the times I heard someone say to me, you're too technical. And then a few months later, someone said to me, oh, this role is not for you because you're not that technical. So it's really about perceptions. And one thing I learned is I can let those perceptions guide my path, or I can decide whether those are perceptions or facts. And that's something I always took as a starting point for all my conversations going forward. And to be honest, this is something that you learn along the way. It doesn't happen in one day. It takes years. In my case, it took me 15 years. But I think the biggest base for my career, as I mentioned, was set up then when I did the whole chaos engineering and when I started at infrastructure within ING. The first 5 years in that space really taught me what leadership means. And I really have to give credits to my manager then, because when I was looking at the story and I was building up, all the facts that I actually learned from him keep coming back. And he was one person who was, let's say, if you talk about the traditional sense of ambitions, he had no ambitions to climb the ladder in the corporate world. He knew he wanted to take an early retirement, which meant going to Spain and living his life with his wife and dogs at the age of 55. And he's doing that, actually, to be honest, right now. So he had that ambition. But the way he led his teams is something that I absolutely learned. So things like simple, basic aspects of administration when you become a manager. Let's say when you have limited budgets and you have a lot of people, identifying talents, identifying the potentials in people, identifying how you can enable them as a manager, and giving them the space and the freedom to really showcase who they are. And I don't think he even realizes it or he even is aware of it because he's really taken his retirement. And hence I'm not in touch with him. But he really set the base and gave me the tools and tricks to really go about my journey. And I hope my current people see that a bit, and it enables them to grow in the space. The other aspect in terms of relativity of perceptions is a lot of things when you go along this journey. Yeah? So if I make it very specific to women, we as women have this biological clock ticking when we hit 30. And some people say, well, you should have kids before 30. Some people say you should have kids after 30. Yeah, it really depends. But why it's important in the spiral staircase is somehow people tend to connect that to your career growth as well. And when you're moving ahead, so as long as you're just an individual contributor like an engineer or an architect, and it's not really an individual contributor today in the agile world, but let's say from the relativity perspective, and you want to make your step towards leadership, the first thing that hits people is, and it's not just on what I've heard, it's also about people I coach. I've heard that quite often come back to me from them saying, Vidisha, but how do you manage personal life with professional life? And the question basically they're asking is, how do you manage being a mother when you also have an ambitious career path that you want for yourself? To be honest, it's a blind spot. It's environment. It's a natural path, and they do not have to be either or, which I'll delve into a bit further on popular demand in my next slide. But it's really about you. It's really about what you want and how you manage it. So this is something, let's say, environmental related, and it's great to have people who are concerned about you, but at the end of the day, it's you who has to do the work, or it's you who has to move forward or not move forward. So it's really on you, and when it comes to your journey, you will have loads of these blind spots, and always take them, as my mentor said at one point, with a pinch of salt. It's a matter of relativeness, and it's a matter of perceptions. It's ultimately for you to decide how you want to go about it, and it's you to maneuver the blind spots. And you can always take them as words of caution, but that's what it is. That's about it. If you go further in your journey, you should always be cautious that one is, of course, taking the next step, but it's also about being on the step that you are. So once you've taken a step, being on that step and really knowing what it means, totally immersing in it, experiencing it, and really enjoying and learning from what you do. Because as I mentioned in my introduction, it's a journey about repurposing. It's a journey about experiences. It's a journey about your expertise, and it's a journey about sharing. So it's really about that. And if I look at my journey, it really helps me when I look at it from those glasses, because then it really helps me see where I want to head and how I want to change gears when the time is right. This is a slide which I put in only yesterday. So as I mentioned, this is my first non-technical talk. So I did a pre-pilot with some group of very enthusiastic people. And I asked them, what would you like to hear from my story? And this was the top choice from a lot of people. So I thought, okay, it deserves some attention. So I became a mother of a little boy 2 years back. And it was also quite a journey, but I will not get into that one particularly. But as I mentioned in my earlier slide, it's really about a choice. It was something I wanted. I really desperately wanted. I wanted to be a mother since I was quite young, and it's not what your parents want of you. It's not what your partner even wants of you. It's really you. If you're going to carry a child, mind you, it's gonna take a toll on your body. It's gonna take more than a toll. It's gonna take a change in you as a person, as everything that's about you. So it's really your choice, and it's you who decide. And it's not because the environment says you so. It's not because nature says you so. Because you're a woman, you have to be a mother. No, it's really if you want it, and it's a lot of work. So if you do not want it, don't do it. It's sleepless nights. It's exhaustion as you've never known it before. No amount of night partying actually teaches you the exhaustion of bringing up a child. Absolutely, you have your partner, hopefully, to help you around. In my case, I'm lucky that ways, but that may not be the case as well. But it's really something that you have to want to do. Again, in the context of work, it's up to you really how you want to bring up your child. One of the eyebrow raises that I got when I started back after 3 months of maternity was, wow, that's too soon. Don't you want to extend your maternity? Well, actually, I shortened my maternity because I was starting as the IT area lead, which was a new role for me, a very new domain for me. And I wanted to start slowly, but it was my choice. I got eyebrows raised by friends who said, you're going to send your kid 5 days a week to the daycare? That's too much. Even the other day, I went to his counselor and or child psychologist, and she said, 5 days? That's too heavy. To be honest, it's not really the quantity. It's really the quality of time that you spend with your kid. So it's really up to you how you define your time and schedules and your calendar. And it's your call on priorities. As they very rightfully say in the flights, put your oxygen mask before you help others. So if you need time off from your work and you need time off from your baby, it's okay. It's really okay. You need time off. You are a human being as well. You need your, how do you say, refueling time. You need some time for yourself. And just because you're a mother, just because you're an ambitious career person doesn't mean you put yourself last on the list. And at the end of it, it's all about what you value the most. If you think quality is over quantity, it's you to decide. If you think I want to take off a longer maternity, do it. If you want to take sabbatical because you want to go off studying, or if you want to take sabbatical or a parental leave, do it. But just because someone else is not doing it doesn't mean they don't have the right value system. So always be mindful of things that you would like to do and things that you would like others to do, because it's their life and it's your life. So live your own and let others live theirs. And I hope this does cover a lot of the questions, a lot of the chapter leads or the, let's say, engineering managers who report into me and or not report into me, but report into IT area leads or elsewhere engineering directors, at least get some insights on and puts them to ease a bit. And again, one additional thing is one very important thing to mention is when I started on this IT area lead, I gave the interview when I was 8 months pregnant. And I still remember a lot of colleagues, and one of the questions that also came by in the talk was, did you have colleagues who were overprotective? Yes, you will. Do you have colleagues who are protective? Yes, you will. So they told me, why do you want to pick up this role? This is too heavy. This is too new. It's too big a scale. And do you really want to do it? Just do what you're good at right now and take your time, you know, so that you don't have to learn new stuff while you're also learning how to become a mother. And today I'm so glad I didn't listen to them, but I listened to myself. Because to be honest, after those sleepless nights, if I didn't have this work or this role to go back to, I wouldn't be able to leave my bed. So you need something to motivate you to really go to work as well. So really decide for yourself what means the best for you. Having said that, if you decide you want to do it, you want to continue doing what you want to do and not take the next step while becoming a mother, that's also fine. But do not let pregnancy or motherhood define the next step for you. So what does this all mean? What did I really learn? And I've been sharing quite bits and pieces around what did I already learn. But one thing that I will repeat, and I will repeat quite a few things during my talk, it's really about repurposing. It's really about stretching. It's really about sharing knowledge. And for me, this was all about my journey. And of course, it can be different for different people. But why I say repurposing? So as I mentioned, I started off as a programmer. I was trained in Java programming, but went on to doing Oracle and Linux migrations. Did a lot of automation, like Sutapa mentioned in our earlier talk. Got into architecture, moved into driving initiatives, doing product ownership, doing a chapter lead, doing IT management, doing IT area leader management, and still stepping into different shoes time and again when there's a need. But it's really about repurposing. Why? Because for me, after 2 years, 3 years, when I've done something and when I get comfortable with a certain role and a certain technology, it's time for me to learn something new. And yes, last 3 years, I was focusing on learning motherhood and parenting. So I didn't learn much on the technology side, but it did give me lots of insights for my leadership part. And also that's been something that I've been picking up heavily in the last 3 years. Also doing digital transformations on a side note. But now I felt the itch, so I picked up another study like machine learning. It is totally new for me. Again, it's about repurposing. It's really about adding that additional flavor, getting your life a bit more exciting again. So when you start getting comfortable, or when I start getting comfortable, that's when I start stretching again. And it doesn't come easily. It starts feeling uneasy a bit, and then I'm like, what's going on? It's really about, okay, I need to do something else. I need to do something different. And in all this, sharing knowledge is very key. Why? Because while you share knowledge, you also get to learn a lot. Because one is, of course, you are sharing your perspective, and you will see a lot of people then chiming in, pitching in, and then you figure out, I never really thought about it like this. I never really gave it this perspective. And even, let's say, in people coaching, when you do that, you will hear a lot of that, and you will also get to learn a lot in that. So when you coach someone, it's a two-way street. It's never one way. It's really a circle. You give something, you get back something, and it's not with the intention of getting back something, but while giving, you realize you're actually gaining a lot. One of the questions that I got from my pre-pilot group was, how did you do it? What were the challenges of working within a white male leadership team, and how did you overcome them? To be honest, things have changed since back in the days of 2008-9. Yes, banking is still quite male-dominated. IT is still quite male-dominated industry, but things are changing. And one of the things that I always say is, and now that I have a boy, I actually realize I never believed in stereotypes, but there's so many things that are so fundamentally built into being a woman and being a man. And it's not good or bad, it's just about being different. And it's about getting that diversity in the team and getting that and voicing that diversity. More often than not, as a lot of people or a lot of women will realize, you will be the only woman in the room. I still remember there was one time it just happened that I was in a room with Yana, who was a speaker yesterday, and another woman who was one of my engineers in the Kiosk engineering team. And she just said it out loud. Wow, this is the first time I'm in a room with 3 women, and just women in a meeting. It was like a deja vu moment. It was like, wow, this never really happens. But it's changing. And what we can do as women is really voice the difference that we bring to the team and do not shy away from it. A lot of my mentees have mentioned things like their colleagues telling him, oh, you're oversensitive. Oh, you think too much. Oh, you're diving too deep into this. This is not necessary. You're too emotional. So be it. Maybe that team needs that. And I can only say, and maybe I've been lucky and not pushed back, but again, it comes back to what you value. So if you value in your team, be it men or women, that everybody expresses themselves as they are, you need to take the hit first. So you need to be vulnerable, as Harita mentioned in a talk yesterday. It's about compassionate leadership, as she mentioned yesterday. So it's really about setting the example. And I don't know if I followed a tip or trick in this part, but I think it was this natural thing of being myself. And my wife always tells me this: you're no different with anybody, be it your friend, be it your partner, be it your colleague. And I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but that is the thing which naturally comes to me, and which is what I which is why I'm no different at work or at home. And for me, that's important. And that's, for me, it is important. And hence, that's my value system. And I like to stick to it. So at the end of the day, it's really about what you value the most. And the other question that came to me was, did I ever plan on entering this role? As I said, when I was young, I was this happy-go-lucky. It was always like this as a kid as well. We had quite a hard childhood. but I was the one who was the happy-go-lucky kid. I just took whatever came my way. And yes, as you grow, you start changing a bit. You start molding a bit. So what I was at 24, I'm not that at 36. I do know better in the sense of what I don't want. Do I know what I want? Quite a bit. But do I really know what I want? I don't know. Maybe tomorrow something will happen or something will come my way which will change my thoughts. But what I do like to say is, and of course that means that I'm a bit of a generalist as well. Yeah, so I've picked up different technologies on my way. I've picked up different concepts on my way. And that's what I like, but doesn't mean that everybody likes that. So it's not really about specialism in terms of technology concepts, but what I mean is, in this world today, it's really about adapting. It's really about going with the flow and figuring out what you like to do, what you don't like to do, and let it drive a path a bit. Because also learned it in the hard way. I had planned all my life. At 16 and 24, things changed totally. And that was a day when I figured that you can plan the entire life, but actually life has different plans for you. And you could crib about it, or you could just take it on and live it to the fullest. So, which is why I put this picture there, because it's really about the moments, and it's really about how you take those moments and how you let them make a difference to your life. So, as I said, this talk is not about a toolkit, or it's not about tips and tricks, but what I can only share is what helped me and what didn't help me. And of course, in my 15 years of my career, there were moments where, be it because of people, be it because of environments, I started doubting myself. And that was the worst thing I could do. And I was lucky I got the wake-up call from my wife, who said, when I was telling her, can I do it? I don't think so. And she was like, you are doubting yourself? That's so weird. And it struck me. I was like, yeah, I've taken things from scratch and built it on. And why am I doubting myself? That's really, really key. So to not doubt yourself, have confidence, and letting others tell you what you can and you cannot do, it's your life. Decide for yourself. And yes, complaining doesn't help at all, because what helps instead is talking with a positive intent. And this is a phrase I'm using from a book that I'm recently reading, No Rules Rules, from Netflix. And it's so important that you give feedback and receive feedback, of course. But giving and receiving feedback with a positive intent can have an impact on your life and the impact on the person you're giving or receiving it from. So do that cautiously. And as I said earlier, in regards to motherhood, in regards to all the other things, to not fake it. Do things only when your heart is into it. Otherwise, don't do it. Because then automatically, if you do something your heart is in, you will be good at it. And if you're not good at it, you'll figure a way to be good at it. So believe in yourself and believe in the things that you do. That's really key. What other things that help me? And I think this definitely is something that you can take from, especially on the mentorship and networking part. And again, networking, a lot of people think it's about doing those informal highs and buys and making those fake smiles. Again, for me, that's not networking. Networking is really about forming an aligned network, knowing and connecting with people where you can give and receive. It's really about people who can help you be a better person, a better professional, a better human being. It's about having mentors who can guide you, who can show you their journey, so you can get inspired from them. As I said, taking the leap of faith. It's really important that it's not easy to take risks. But what's the worst you can lose, especially in a corporate IT world? What can you lose? You're not dealing with, you're not a doctor, you're not dealing with lives. You're dealing with lives, but in a different way. So what's the max that can happen? So take the leap of faith sometimes. And listen to your body. Very, very important. It gives you a lot of signs when you're stressed out, when something's bothering you. I once had a stomach infection which bothered me for 3 months. I figured out it was not the stomach infection. It was caused by the stress I was having because of the disconnect I had with my boss. And it can happen. And I even told my boss, it's probably in a different, he was no bad person, but in a different context, we would have worked greatly. But just in that setting, we didn't work great. And it was having an impact on me personally and physically. So it's so important to listen to your body. And to be honest, I'm still in touch with that person. But as I said, it was not the person that was the problem. The problem was the equation we were in, and we didn't fit well in that equation. So it's not about complaining. It's really about finding what is it that's not working, and really using your body cues for it, not just for yourself, but also the people that you're managing. You will see a lot of times people calling in sick. When you see them calling in sick for a few times, you know something's bothering, especially if they have things like migraines. Yeah, that's a clear sign of stress. You can absolutely use it to help yourself coach people. And again, being true to yourself. Do what you like, do what you think. Of course, with your surrounding and the context and people around you. But it's really about leading your path before you can even lead others. So be the example you want to be, and just follow your heart. So as I said, it's really about when you are not looking, when you're not planning, and when you're being yourself, be it being a very strong version of yourself, being you crying in the front of 100 people. If you feel like it, just do it. And trust me, more people will be inspired from you doing and being who you are than trying to fake things and trying to be that strong person that you're not feeling at that moment. So really, really follow your heart. Your brain will just manage. It's meant to manage. It's your brain after all. It can figure out, but the other way doesn't work. Conquer your fears. Just take the leap of faith. And that's what I would leave my talk with. So, Like or Mariam?
Yes. Thank you, Vidisha, for your great, inspiring story. I think a lot of people can relate and also learn from your experience. Yeah, so we have a couple of questions for you. And I think even though you intended not to give a talk with tips and toolkits, you did.
I realized.
Yeah, we have a question from, if you had to give one tip based on your journey, what would it be? Well, I think you already gave a lot of tips. Maybe if you had to pick one, like what would be your key takeaway that you want your viewers to remember from your story?
Yeah, so Evans I know very well. He's one of my engineers. Evans, follow your heart. I can only say that. That's the key tip that I can give you. Follow your heart.
Great. That's beautiful. So Tapa actually has a question for you as well. What would be your message to the mothers around the world who are caught amidst the other priorities in life and work ambitions?
Take your time. Really take your time. It's about what is important at that moment in time. So if your child needs you, just drop everything and go. People will figure out. The good part of being in a team is you can drop stuff and people will pick it up. Make people aware of things around you. So I think one thing I can definitely say from my experience was my first year was very hard because my son had a lot of allergies. So we were in and out of hospitals at the drop of a hat, literally. Like every weekend, I had emergencies, ambulances at my door because we were figuring out what allergies he had. But making my colleagues aware of it, that I'm going through this, and there can be moments that I need to step out, and really making sure that you plan your work in such a way that nothing stops. To be honest, nothing really stops. Even if you vanish from the world map, nothing will really stop. It's just that feeling of, nothing can go without me. To be honest, everything works. So people will manage. So have your priorities very clear.
Thank you, Felicia. One last question from Veronica. What is your response to people who give you a lot of good advices which you feel do not meet your lifestyle or ambitions?
Take them with a pinch of salt. Listen to them, because sometimes these advices come in a package that you've not seen it in. So you know it, but it's in a different package. So it gives you a different perspective, but really pick and choose what suits you and what doesn't. It's your lifestyle, it's your ambition. Nobody defines it for you.
Great. Thank you, Badisha. We don't have any additional questions for now. Maybe if you have, you can find Badisha on LinkedIn, I guess.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, I love mentoring people, coaching people, and being mentored myself. So if you want any of this, please reach out to me via LinkedIn. If you're within ING, you know the channels, but outside ING, you can absolutely reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I will respond.
Thank you, Badisha, for your great open story. Thanks. Yes, so this is the end of the third day of the Women in Engineering Days. Actually, tomorrow we have our last day. I would like to thank all the speakers for today, Badisha and Sutapa, for your great stories.
Thank you.
Yes, your talks are recorded on the YouTube channel, so if you would like to watch it again or want to inspire someone else with their stories, please share it for them. And hopefully we'll see you back tomorrow. You can see our event for tomorrow on our meetup page. And for now, I would like to wish you a very pleasant Wednesday. See you back tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye-bye.